Hi, everyone. Thank you all so much for joining us tonight for a special live screening of Tiger Tiger. This film is offered courtesy of Gravitas Ventures, and it's being released, or I guess it has been released in select theaters and drive-ins, as well as digital and VOD as of last week. So please recommend the film if you enjoy it. We're going to run the entire feature here during the webinar. It runs about 92 minutes. Then we're going to have a Q&A live with the writer, director, producer, Kerry Mondragon, alongside the co-producer and current SCA student, Jack Nielsen, lead actress, Sam Quartin, and I think a whole bunch of other cast members, but I'll let Kerry tell you more about it. So I'm going to hand things over to the director, Kerry, who can set up the film, and then we'll get started.
Great. Wait, can you hear me? Okay. Great. Thanks, Alex. And thank you all for jumping on to watch Tiger Tiger. Hope you enjoy it, and we will be around afterwards to answer any questions.
All right, enjoy the show. Hi, everyone. Welcome. And thank you all so much for sticking around for the Q&A. I'm not exactly sure how much of the cast is here, so if you're a panelist, feel free to turn on your video. And if you got a link to the webinar, but you wind up on the attendee side, just put a quick raise your hand or something, and I'll move you over. So thank you all so much for coming, for joining us. I have to say, I'm incredibly impressed that you guys made a film in Slab City. And for those of you watching who aren't aware, Slab City is unincorporated land on the southeast end of the Salton Sea. And Bombay Beach is actually right at the sea. And it's an incredibly evocative place that I'm just shocked that anyone was able to gain the trust to be able to tell a story of that community. So I wanted to actually start there. Kerry, tell us about the inspiration to do something within that community, and how that, at what part in the process of writing this story did that come about?
Thanks, Alex. Thank you all for watching it. Yeah, that's a good question. It happened pretty quickly once I knew that I wanted, like, the idea of like a free society was there. Early on, I knew that that's where they would escape to in this. I just had, it was the first place I went down to Location Scout. I knew a lot about it. There's a lot of really scary stuff online, like when I Google it, and I was always fighting that, like, for the rest of the shoot. But there's just it just gets a bad rap with that. And so I went down there, and I actually got stuck in the sand. Like I met this woman, Tori, and who became like the locals casting director and some other roles. But she basically was like, don't go to East Jesus. Like, that's like kind of sketchy right now. And so then, like, I just went down there anyway with like my two dogs and got stuck in the sand. And then it was really like, and the keys were locked I mean, it was this whole like massive thing that, like, this guy came out of that TP scene. There was a different guy living there, and he came out, and he was like really sketchy. And, you know, he's like trying to have me spend the night. And like, it was basically the whole story there. You know, like, he was explaining this about this guy who lived in a phone booth. And so, like, that location, this is within like 5 hours. So like that, within those 5 hours, there's like so much content that was just like flowing into me in a way that it made it very easy in that sense, almost like the location was a character in itself. And but towards the end of that, it was like I got bailed out by this rabbit side camp, who turned out to be like very trusted. She became the costume designer, Jesse Rabbit, and Peter Rabbit, and Brian was in there. And so they basically, yeah, like, you know, now it's just building trust with them. My friend had like lost his house at the time, so like it just worked out where I was like, man, why don't you just go live with, like, you know, Rabbit Side? They're awesome, and like, it's enough. And so, like, it was really this family thing, and I think that was the only way of doing it. It's like, you can't go down there with the, you know, big crew and security and like try and like separate yourself from them. So I feel like that was, you know, just being inclusive, being more of like a tribe and family was definitely the environment.
Well, I want to go into some of the ways in which you incorporated non-actors from the community, but I really wanted to also open this up to the actors that are with us, Sam Quartin and Eden Brolin. And Jack, you can weigh in too on this as a co-producer on the film. You know, with obviously, for all of the reasons Kerry just mentioned, filming in Slab City and Bombay Beach is not necessarily guaranteed to be safe. And I'm curious, as actors, what convinced you to go on this journey into that community and make a film with them?
As soon as I talked to Kerry and he told me that he had spent time with those people and he was sending me photos, I was so excited. And I could tell once we got there, I was unsure of what that would feel like, but everyone was, it didn't feel like we were invading their space. You could tell they had there was a mutual respect. They were psyched to be a part of it. I mean, some of my favorite moments in the film are with like this kid, Bobby Hill, or this guy named Utah who left while we were shooting because he was just a renegade. Yeah, I had a great time down there with everybody. It didn't feel weird.
Eden, I see you nodding. Do you want to?
Yeah, I would just second that. I mean, I think like Kerry and Jay were really smart in just being able to go in there and cultivate a relationship down there so that we weren't stepping on too many toes by being down there. And it was some of the like more special like relationships I've gotten to, and just friendships, and like it was very, very special. But I don't remember feeling any like hesitation going down there. There was just a lot of like, there was a feeling of mutual trust that I think was shared among the group. So yeah.
One thing that I thought was amazing was that Kerry, you had someone steal your truck who then became the head of your security. Is that right?
Yeah, that was that was one story. Well, let me just say that before that, it was like I reached out to another really big film that shot there, like in Bombay Beach sort of area, and this is before I went down there, and like I ended up getting a hold of them, and I was talking to him, and the guy was just like, "Don't go down there, like you gotta." It's like a weird mob situation. They ride around on golf carts. You gotta like have hush money in like the petty cash, and this whole dramatic story. And so I was just like, damn, that sucks, you know, like, but he's like, look, I'll help you out, man. Like, I'll just send you some of the contacts down there. So he sent me like this folder, and like, you know, it was a very low budget film. So like I ended up just like forging some, like just taking those like permits and like doing a lot of the forging there on them. And then going in, basically having those like in the binder. But that one of those guys that we ended up like, I think I know who this person was in the golf cart, but he was like a sweetheart. He had like, it just was part of the vibe down there. And I think he, like this woman had broken up with him. I mean, it's more like long drawn out story, but he came, like we were shooting the TP scene, and he came up to me. He's like, Kerry, somebody like uploaded, my ex-girlfriend uploaded these videos of us online. And I was like, where? And he's like, right there. And I'm like, there's like 100,000 clicks on that. And he just flipped out for like 24 hours, went on a bender. And then like 2 days later, he ended up just like, I got a call in the morning, like, we can't find the grip truck. We think blah, blah, blah's got it. And yeah, just turned it. That was just that was like kind of a normal thing. Like, it was just like, oh man, all right, let me go talk to him, you know, like, and that was really the thing with it too, is like, I had to, you know, you're kind of playing a psychologist in a way, or like, just like a therapist maybe to a lot of people. And like, that came in handy where I'm just like, look, I came down, you know, we came down here not to cause a footprint, and like, we don't want to do that. We don't want to disrupt this community as much as that sucks that he did that, or somebody else threatened the actor with a knife and stuff. Like, there was some weird stuff that happened in Bombay, like in some of the areas outside, but like, but it was just part of the thing, you know, and it's like, yeah.
Well, since you mentioned permits, let me bring in the producer here. Jack, what role did you have in terms of securing things? Were you involved in any of the permits? And also, what kind of resources are down there for a film shoot? I mean, I know there was a big fire right in the town right outside of Slab City, right? Just a couple of years ago, and I'm wondering how much infrastructure is even still around for stuff like power, I don't know if you were using generators or anything like that.
We definitely had a generator that we were using for like G&E stuff. But for locations and stuff like that, man, I mean, we shot a long time ago. So a lot of this is kind of like a distant memory now. Like this would have been like fall 2018, I think, when we were dealing with like pre-production stuff. And I was working pretty closely with Salvatore, who couldn't make it, who's our other producer, on stuff like that. But one thing in particular I remember was finding the pharmacy. That's a good story because that was a big challenge. Like shooting in a pharmacy, typically, like especially if you're in like LA County, you know, it's like a bit like trying to like shoot in like a bank or something like that. You know, it's just like there's a lot of regulation around it because there's like controlled substances and stuff there. But we shot in a real pharmacy, and it was like maybe like 45 minutes or an hour away from Bombay Beach. And that was, you know, challenging to find, but we ended up finding the pharmacy, and the pharmacist in the movie was the actual like owner of the pharmacist. And then he ended up like helping us out and like investing in the film a little bit. And that ended up being like a really great happy accident where we found this guy who let us use his location and then wanted to act in the film and wanted to like champion the film and help out and stuff like that. So that was, you know, a story about kind of finding location that was at first very challenging, but then ended up sort of having a lot of happy accidents that occurred from finding the pharmacy that we did end up finding.
One last thing before we go into the writing, but I think probably quite intentionally, there is the conspicuous absence of Salvation Mountain, which of course has been in films. And I'm curious, because you know you do go back and forth a little bit between Slab City and Bombay Beach, and in the middle of that, Salvation Mountain. So I'm curious where your thoughts were on not to include that in the film.
Yeah, that was a big thing. I didn't even want like any sort of like second unit situation happening where anybody did film that. Like it's beautiful, you know. I mean, it's a beautiful, you know, kind of American monument in a way. But look, I mean, I think it's like one of those things where it's a tragic situation. When I would go down there all the time, like this woman, Tori, she was the manager of it, and I would see people that just, you know, it was the whole influencer sort of thing just started blasting that with like, they would drive 4 hours, they'd get out, they'd take the photo, they'd just turn around and go right back to wherever they can. So it's just like, it can really kind of turn you like, oh man, this sucks. You know, like that was sort of, and so but the more important to the story of it is like, I didn't want any of the geography to like, any nostalgia stuff, any of that I like wanted to push away, you know, or anything that would pull people out of that sort of dream, right? So.
Well, so in addition to finding inspiration with the community down there, what I was reading about the film is that you also were, you know, you were coming out of a period of hardship in your own life and wanted to tell something really honest that kind of dealt with the experience of addiction. And I'm curious if you can tell me a little bit about the starting point for that part of the film.
Yeah, I mean, I had been using a lot of opiates and benzos for a while, and I just like, and I had been working too, and I had this sort of facade of like, where no one really knew that I was using until this like pretty significant overdose happened. And then after that, it was like coming out of that, it was just a complete, like, everything changed where I was like, everything that I was chasing before, like all these things, I was doing it wrong, you know? And for example, if you go like, you know, shoot something and you're worried about the awards and the accolades and like, what is it going to do for me? And none of that works. And so I wanted to do it like 100% opposite, like just completely something where it's like, okay, all we can do is like contribute to this thing. I don't know what we're going to get. No one maybe will just, I mean, maybe nothing will happen with it. And it was really that approach that like was sort of the mission behind it. And then, yeah, I mean, just as far as writing it, it was a lot of addiction. It was just me sort of processing, like, I mean, it's pretty newly sober in a way of like from that. And it was really like an elegy or a sort of like ode to like, you know, love addiction, drug addiction. And yeah. And so it just kind of took that form, like kind of like it just felt like my truth, not like the reality, but it was like that. Also like the waiting room part was like the first idea that I had where it was going to take place in like the Van Nuys methadone clinic, and where people just are nodding out all the time. And so I thought it would just be like that idea of like, you know, what if like Dorothy was like in a methadone clinic in Van Nuys and nodding out, and then like what would that dream look like? And so with people in the waiting room, and so that was sort of the initial concept with it. Yeah.
Since you do have some non-actors involved, I'm curious, maybe for everyone, how did the process of, I guess, finding the characters that are, you know, for actors, the actors here, what was that like to find your character, but then also have these moments where, let's say, the plot sort of takes a back seat to some sort of sublime moments about, you know, life in the camp or life with the non-actors? What was that process like?
Eden, do you want to talk? I like Kerry just said, as soon as I talked to him, I said, "Are you sober?" Because I could read it in the script. It was I had also just gotten a couple years sober when I got the script, and it was on the page. I mean, it was really raw. He was putting it all there. And once he said he was, there was just a kind of instant bond, and I was down to do whatever he said we were doing. Yeah, I was kind of ready to go.
Even if you want to jump into.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I think that is so interesting because part of what I like about going to work is like structure, and I like a lot of structure in my life, and it turns out I have like really gnarly control issues. And so going and doing this movie was like such an amazing challenge to that, to just be like, all right, sit the fuck back, see what's going to happen today, and be a part of what unfolds in the way you need to be utilized to have it unfold in the best way. And I think that was just such an interesting way to meld what Kerry and I had been talking about, what that character was, into just sort of what was happening on a day-to-day with the shooting schedule, and who was going to be there, and who was going to be playing this part, and what we were going to be doing that day. It was just a really neat opportunity to just kind of let go and see what was going to happen and adapt to the wild and like changing plot just day to day. It was really neat to be able to do that.
What were some of the biggest discoveries that you found along the way by being there that hadn't necessarily come to you when you were writing the script?
Well, surprisingly, like a lot of the scenes, I mean, pretty much all the scenes were written in that from a scene point of view. What had changed a lot, but we didn't have any locations. It's impossible to lock locations in like the typical, you know, prep that you'd want to do on a film. So a lot of it was changing every morning. I mean, you know, there's a lot of like who's camping in front of the skate park, that person is the person who's like the mayor of the skate park for however long. So like, are we friends with that person? And then we would just have to like figure that out, and like, oh, you know, and so we would go shoot there. It was the best time to shoot there. We lost the waiting room. We had to shoot in this church. I mean, it was just like every day we just had a different location. So we would adapt to that. And or some of the, you know, non-professionals like Utah, like him, you know, he was out there. He had come from Utah, and so that was his name too. It was given to him there, and he like didn't have a shirt or shoes. And but when I walked into that location of the motel, there was just this treadmill on the left, and like they had started to like pull it out. I was like, no, like we have to have like just the treadmill there, and like we gotta have Utah like on there as the like bellboy. So like that was something new. So we had to like, you know, get him wardrobe, showered, and then we got him in the scene. But it was really great in that sense, not having prep, because I feel like if they had, you know, if I got a script earlier, like I would start preparing, you know, and I don't think that was good in that environment for a lot of like the non-professionals. It was always usually the first, second take, and it was best when they just didn't really know that they were going to be in the scene that day. Yeah.
Mm. I really love the bit of animation at the beginning and end of the film. Can you talk about sort of experimenting with that, sort of as an entry in and out of the dream?
Yeah, like so it was sort of magical how she came about as well. Melissa Jarum, and she is like this brilliant artist in the UK. The aesthetic was like of the film was definitely like it was the idea of like beautiful and like ugly. So like having, you know, everything from the handheld to the beautiful seeming frames and beautiful people without makeup, but they're dirty, but they're doing dirty things. Like all of that beautiful dirtiness came about. And so even with like the score and the way that we did it and ran it through tape decks and stuff like that. So it always felt like something was being, and so with Melissa, it was like when we talked about it, well, first I found her and like, I think I found her on like a Vimeo, and she was done this beautiful like poem, and it was just, so I sent it, so I just reached out to her and I was like, this would be so amazing if you would do this. And like, so we talked for a while. She had like gone to a William Blake thing at the Tate, and we developed that style of like, look, it's got to be stop motion. It can't be like if we're gonna do this, like every frame has to be painted, and then we got to do like stop motion with it. So it took a long time of that, you know, but she is so fast and such like she would just knock these out. Like, so yeah, so it was amazing.
Jack, can you tell us what some of the more challenging things were for you in terms of production obstacles to overcome?
Yeah, I mean, during filming, you know, it was like we had a very small crew, and you know, I mean, just like thinking back on the shoot, it was like so much fun and it was a blast, but it was like very hectic, you know, working with like the small crew that we had, and, you know, making sure things were happening on schedule. Like our AD got sick for a few days. I remember that. So we didn't have an AD for a few days. And, you know, that's just like the first thing that came into mind.
Jack became the grip too for like a couple of days, by the way.
Yeah, I had to fire our grip. So then I had to like help with like grip stuff, because we like lost, you know, our grip guy, and we already had like a really small like camera department. It was basically just like a gaffer and a grip, and then like the DP and like a cameraman and a DIT. So like the camera department was already really small, and then we had like the grip left, and then I had to start doing like grip work. And then, so it was just like always like really like strapped for people on set at first. And then in post-production, you know, that also had its own challenges. It was like getting more money basically. And then, you know, getting the edit the place that we wanted it to be at. And, you know, one of my favorite things about the film is like all the music in the film. And that was like very labor intensive process to like deal with music licensing, because we didn't really have a music supervisor. So I basically ended up doing a lot of that work. But that, you know, in post-production was something that was a lot of work, but very, very rewarding. Especially with the music, seeing that in the end, it's one of my favorite parts about the movie is all of the great, you know, Kerry has such varied taste that ended up in the movie, and it's really wonderful seeing all that in the final product.
Sam and Eden, I'm really interested to know how this experience between the remote location, the small crew, the non-actors, the loose structure, how that affects the way that you work, and if there's things from this experience you would take back to, you know, projects that are a little bit more sort of classical in terms of its scale and process. Was there something about this that was new and different that you were going to take with you?
Yeah, I loved one of my favorite scenes to shoot was the skate park. Like there wasn't anything in the script that said, and now they read tarot cards to you. I mean, we just sat down with those people and she's like, oh, here are my cards. Do you want a reading? And then we started trading clothes. It was just naturally what was happening, which was really cool. It was definitely by far the most fun. I'm really tired right now, so I don't sound like it, but I swear it was the most fun experience I've ever had on a film because of Kerry and everybody. And what I'd take away. It's hard. I went to a real movie theater, a live theater on Saturday night and watched this movie in New Jersey. And it was so exciting. This really bizarre place in Clifton, New Jersey called the Allwood. If you're ever in New Jersey, go check it out. But it was really cool. I feel like this movie's meant to be seen on a big screen. But I can't differentiate. Like I was proud of the film, but I can't look at myself and say, I learned this or I take away that acting wise, just because I'm extremely hard on myself. And when I watched it, I went, damn, you suck. But the film itself, I love. That's all. Thanks.
The skate park day was actually my first day. So I was freaking out. I was like, when are they going to tell me to go and start saying that, what are we doing here? I was freaking out that day, but like quickly understood what was actually going on. But I think the like big takeaway from this, kind of like I was saying before in that other answer, being able to, I think it's so easy to go to work and get caught up in like, we gotta get the thing and we gotta go and the lights leaving and all the shit. And it's so easy to just get caught up in that and have your own little version of that happening in your head at all times. And like remembering that in all the chaos, like it is possible to like slow down. It is possible to like take a moment to take it in. And I feel like when I was doing Tiger Tiger, I happened to be in a great place where I was able to kind of go along with the rush of it and also like slow down and take in this really like magical experience that was happening at the end of like my first quarter of life. And it really is like, it's one of the most amazing and special experiences I've ever had doing a movie, and just, yeah, being able to remember to like slow the fuck down for a sec, even in the midst of like complete insanity.
Have the residents of Slab City been able to see the film yet?
Yeah, they've all seen it. They saw it pretty early on. Like one of them has a screening like scenario in that mud hut, like right outside there. They built a screening area, and yeah, you know, they were all really proud of it. That was a big, you know, like I said, it was a big thing to have them just as proud of it as the actors and me and, you know, everybody involved. And so it was a really important thing for me. Yeah. And I'm friends with a lot of them still. And yeah, I think that.
I want to just remind everyone, if you want to ask a question, just put put something in the Q&A box, and I'll move over to that in a second. So, you guys can feel free not to answer this if it's too sort of inside Hollywood. But can you talk a little bit about getting Dylan to participate? Because there's obviously a lot of people in Hollywood that are there to kind of like manage careers and make sure that their actors are safe, and there's liability issues and stuff like that. And when you plop someone of that sort of prolific stature right now into a situation where you're filming out in the desert, I'm just curious what that was like in terms of getting him to say yes to the role, and then also the getting him away from the Hollywood machine, so to speak.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it started. It was me, Jack, Kaylee, and Salvador casting this in the beginning, right? So it was like, I thought I was fine going down and shooting with non-professionals at first. I was like, well, it wasn't that I was fine. I was just like, I'm gonna do it anyway. And then we just started. I bought like an IMDb Pro account, and I just like drafted these emails that were like, and there was only like one half lie in there, which was that the film was fully financed, or that we had proof of funds, which was one of the things. And so it was, and like part of the thing in the lookbook that I created, I was like, it would be awesome to get somebody that has like a River Phoenix vibe. And then, so then, it was like Dylan came up on that, and like we reached out to him, and his management, it's like a great testament to his management team. They just broke it through to him, and he read it, and he was interested, and it was part of the thing. There was this one, there was like a time when Dylan signed on, there was this, we were still casting the Blake character, and when somebody there was just all these like voices come into the play, like at that point, like, oh, well, now you can cast this person as this person, and like it just got like, and I had to always stay true to this, where it's like, no, it's like Sam was Blake, and I said, if it doesn't work like that, then the film just won't work. And so like, there were things like that along the way, but yeah, it can get pretty noisy, I feel like, with when that type of stuff happens. But honestly, I think Dylan, he jumped on for that reason, because and so he brought his like own trailer down. His dad came down with him, and like, man, he threw himself into it. I mean, it was awesome too, because a lot of the, guys that were hopping trains and, living this life grew up watching him. And so it was that oil and water coming together and actually working, because it's like, oh my God, you're so cool coming down here. Like, damn, you're actually hanging with us. Like, you guys you're staying like, just right out here. Like, oh, so it's like a very communal thing. And I think that's how it worked really well, I feel like, yeah.
Someone's asking how they can see the film again. Can you tell us a little bit about the release, and if it's playing anywhere at drive-ins or anything in the LA area, but also sort of nationally, what your rollout's been like?
Jack, you want to take that, or?
Yeah, we're in 10 theaters nationwide right now. Unfortunately, none very close to LA. Our closest is like in Arizona. We're in.
Yeah, because there's a lot of regulations in LA and New York City.
Yeah, exactly. So we're in 10 theaters, and it's a very, pretty limited release. But yeah, we're in theaters in like Florida and Louisiana and Texas. I think we're in like Dallas. A handful of places.
We tried really to call like all of these cool theaters that were just like in the middle of nowhere, off the I-80 at a truck. There was one called a truck stop off the 80. It was a truck stop movie theater off the 80 in the middle of nowhere. And like, we would call all these, like we spent all day, me and my friend Jay, and like all of them, like across country, would just either close. It's a sad thing, not just because of pandemic, but like but because of that, like just closed. Like Sam even sent me this massive email list of all these theaters, and we emailed them all, and like pretty much 90% of them just like not showing anything. So it's a sad thing. It's also, it's kind of a melancholy sort of feeling, having like like this is the screening here, like with the, you know what I mean? For me, like having that feeling of like, oh, I'll never see this film in a theater right now, you know, maybe like we'll put it on a film print and put it at like New Beverly one day or something for a night, which would be cool. But like, I'll never, but at the same time, this film is like, to me also can only happen at this time, like in this way. And it's just, yeah, so.
So we're getting some questions for Jack about being a USC student and co-producing a movie at the same time. So what was that like, I guess, to juggle those things, and how did you get involved?
I got involved kind of through USC because I reached out to a professor and said I wanted more experience like working in production. And then this professor got me in touch with Kerry and Salvatore. And then my role sort of just like snowballed over time. But I, you know, started like a few months before we shot and helped with pre-production. And then, you know, that role sort of just ended up snowballing, helping Kerry and the other producer with a ton of stuff. And as far as doing this and being a student, I mean, it was certainly a handful at times because, you know, I was doing this and I was a student, and I was also like interning some and, you know, doing a lot of my own projects and other work and stuff like that. But it was also really rewarding for sure, and really enjoyable. And, you know, working with Kerry has been a lot of fun, and being on set was really fantastic. So, I mean, it was a really fantastic experience. And I definitely feel very lucky to sort of like have found some people that were kind of like willing to give me a shot to work on this in, you know, a relatively significant way, which was exciting for me. And yeah, that was, so in the end, it was a lot of fun.
So we talked about obviously working with the community down in Slab City, but how much of the story itself shifted to fit the location?
So, well, I wrote the majority. So it was like I had written the first 20 pages before I went down there. And so it happened within weeks after the rest of it. Wrote it all out based on locations that I had been to. And it fit. The thing about down there is like, you can really create anything that's written. I mean, it sounds crazy, but like anything that you kind of write in there can also be made very quickly down there. And so, you know, like color palette's a big thing for me. So I always had to like, you know, nobody probably ever knows, but there's like associative colors to each character, and like those were important, you know. And it's like when you're on a really like ultra low budget, it's really hard to do that. And there were a lot of, you know, magical things that happened, you know, like that house with the location with Taya, it just fit, you know, that was like that for me, you know, that sort of light blue, and keeping that was a big thing. And so but all that was established, yeah, before we went down there. And it was just a matter of like, as location shifted, it was, I mean, the only thing that was like the car burning scene, but that was also because the car broke down like the day before. We had to tow it there, and the mechanic said it had like 5 minutes of life left. And so like, I had to drive that thing for 5 minutes to find a place and just spin it until it like started steaming. And then it literally just died right there. So it's like, but there were a lot of like kind of magic stuff that happened like that. Yeah.
Brian is asking, how long did you film in Bombay Beach? And if I can just add on that, I mean, overall, how much time did you spend down there, and what was it like to then leave that community? Because you're obviously shaking things up a little bit in terms of how they live their lives. And I'm curious what the process was of taking the production back out of the area.
I had been down there a lot before. So I had met, well, the first person I met was this kid, Cody, and he lives in a couple trailers down from where we shot like that Joe scene. with the crab, and he was like shooting his friend with a BB gun, and so I knew that there was like, this is a very ripe place for like cool, just beautiful sort of imagery, stuff like that. And so I connected with this guy Steve Bombay, who became one of the location sort of scouts coordinator. And Bombay Steve was like the best. He like, I mean, he's like an angel, this guy. And so like I became so close to him, not just on like that, he just had the same aesthetic as me, like loved same music, all that stuff. So he's still down there, and there's a bar there. It's called Ski Inn, and it's sort of the hub of that community. And so we would just go there, and again, it's like becoming family in a way of like, it was, you're playing by their rules. You're coming in there. It was always never separating ourselves from them. We're all in this sort of equal place, and we're not exploiting. Like that was a big thing. It's like not to exploit this, and also not to judge anything. Like that was a big thing with me too. It's like anybody, and there were a lot of instances where just like people like had to leave the crew and stuff like that, because it was just like, and it ultimately came down to stuff like that. It was just like, because it's a danger to everybody, and so it was not just for the film and the performances and all that. I mean, it can like affect like some other stuff. So it's just like human kind of decency, I guess. Yeah.
So we have one last question from Reza. I'm going to kind of paraphrase it a little bit. What sort of projects are you interested in doing next? And have you guys been able to do things over the past year in the film world, or if you've spent, I mean, Sam, I know you're a musician, like what have you been able to do creatively, over the past year, and where does that take you once the pandemic's over?
After this project, sorry, you asked about right now or in the last year, my band had about like 80 dates booked and everything got canceled. So we decided to write. We wrote a new record. We went down to Nashville and recorded with someone we never would have had a chance to record with because they're usually too busy. But because of the pandemic, that was like a silver lining. I haven't shot anything during this. I'm supposed to go shoot something in May in Montana. That'll be my first like COVID production. But it's really just a side note. It creeps me out now, just whatever Kerry was tapped into when he wrote this, because when I watched the movie, and the thing that resonates with me now more than anything is the waiting room concept, because I just feel like we're all in a really large waiting room that is the world. And just Tammie's line of like, we're all just waiting, man. Like, I just hear that in my head sometimes. And anyway, yeah, that's all.
Anyone else want to share what's going on in your lives creatively right now?
Eden was out in Montana, right?
Yeah, I was shooting, yeah, just a lot of like staying inside and being creative. And I don't know, I think Tiger Tiger really like gave me an opportunity to kind of revisit like my priorities as somebody taking part in this business of I don't want to prioritize like hustling to work myself into my next role. I really want to be able to like be of use to people, how I can like help serve the story. And I just felt really like lucky and kind of touched that Kerry was just like, yeah, we want you to like come do this thing, and just being like, okay, sick. And so, yeah, just kind of looking forward to being curious about more opportunities like that, to just be able to say yes and just go with what's going on. But yeah, it's been a special time. It's been a hard time, but special time.
Jack, you must be coming up on midterms.
Yeah, just about. But but for the future and graduation and everything like that, it's still kind of up in the air. But I've been working some on sort of like music video and commercial work and stuff like that, and obviously want to continue to do film and TV. But I mean, immediate plans is probably going to be some combination of like producing and directing, potentially like commercial music video work like that, and you know, hopefully more, you know, feature film projects come up. But yeah, I mean, you know, that's kind of where I'm at right now, and kind of what I've been doing for the past year is just like a little bit of like freelance work and my own sort of projects and shorts and stuff like that. So we'll see what the future has in store.
Kerry, how about for you?
Yeah, I mean, I've been writing a lot. I wrote a couple of projects. This next one is sort of, I mean, it's kind of in the, I'm not like trying to write in this way of like not having it fit in the genre, but it like definitely doesn't fit in the genre in a weird way. It's like this magical sort of story about a little magician and his mom. But yeah, like I feel like that's my only like way of like self-validation or something. Is I have to write a little bit a day, and like that, or it's pure insanity and I just like go insane. And like, so it's like never balanced. It's not really balanced, but like, yes, that's kind of what I've been doing.
If you ever strike that 35mm print, I definitely want to project it on campus. So
that was Craig's idea, because yeah, he was like, man, we got to get this thing at the New Beverly, get it on a film print. And I was like, dude, Craig, you got to help out with that, man. So we're going to do that. Yeah. And also that Easy Rider question, that's cool, because that was the only, Jack knows this, that and Wild at Heart were like the two films that I had watched like the year before. I'm like, man, those are so cool. And I mean, it seeped in it for sure in a way. Yeah, just that.
well, actually, that, you know, I'm really glad you pointed out Wild at Heart, because I was looking at the thank yous, the special thank yous, and there's the David Lynch Foundation in there. And another one that I found really interesting was Alex Cox. And I'm wondering if you could tell us about both of those influences on you. Like, what brought you to thank them in the film?
Well, I did a screening at the David Lynch one of the early like test screenings, because when I got sober, actually, like I started going through the, you know, transcendental meditation there, and Lynn helped me out there so much. And so it was like it was just the right place to like do it. You know, I really valued everybody's feedback. So she held this like kind of big screening there, and I'm still in contact with, you know, with them. And Alex Cox was before, like during that Spike Lee sort of, that was like 2013. Around that time, I had reached out to Alex Cox, and he actually, he was doing a Kickstarter campaign, I think at the time. And so I kind of became close with them, and I was like, I really wanted to work with him, because I love Repo Man and I mean all of his stuff. And so he ended up watching the film recently, like before I sold it, because I'm like, man, it would just like, I value your feedback so much. And he watched it, and I think he said something like, reminds me of like one of those Dennis Hopper movies that they just ran out and shot in the desert, but it's really cool. I really like it. So that was like awesome. Like I really liked, yeah. But it really came down to like, that's why I learned so much on this, was like it was such a learning experience of like who feedback, how to filter feedback, you know. That was like the big thing of like, so when he says that, I know what makes sense, you know, like or if notes come in, and there's ways of like doing that where especially on a film like this, where it's like open for interpretation, some of it. And so yeah.
So just before we call it a night, we talked about the theaters, but is it available on iTunes, or is it a virtual cinema kind of a release?
No, it's on Prime, iTunes. I mean, it's on all of them. There's like a litany of them, but yeah, those are the main ones. Also on our Instagram, I think there's a link that now has all of them listed when you click. It's like a link library or something like that.
Basically, anywhere you can rent movies, you can rent it.
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys so much for joining us, especially Sam, with you coming in from the East Coast. Definitely going to check out that theater in Clifton at some point. Uh, and thank you all so much for making such a beautiful film, such a unique movie, and really showing us something that we don't get to see very often on film. So good luck.
Thank you so much. Thank you guys. It was an honor showing it here.
I'm expecting you back with the print, so
Man,
don't be a stranger. And Jack, I'll see you.
I would never thought I would screen at something at USC, by the way, so it's cool. Yeah.
All right. Good night, everyone. Thanks.
Yeah.